Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Allman, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex, what's up, man?
Not too much, Mike, but I'm tired of group hug and politics and just being nice and good and having fun. Let's get mean. I want to get mean.
Yeah, the world's terrible, so let's be terrible with it. We're leaning into the mean cards today for really just 1,000 different reasons. I mean, we can talk as much as we want to about our, type of fun. And we like that kind of fun because we know what the other side of it is. So let's talk about the other side of it here.
Right.
Because, man, Magic be mean.
Yeah, competitive Magic and competitive CDH. I mean,
sure.
The goal is to win. There's no social contract in these competitive formats. So the idea of mean for them is really just highly effective. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have this very handy list from my company, EDH Rec, the top 100 saltiest cards. And the card's salt score is based on over 600,000 people who voted last year on these cards. So what do you think?
I do want to get into the idea of the salt score.
Yeah.
And why that also kind of affiliates with what we're talking about here.
Sure.
Because you brought up CDH and competitive, where it's like, no, the goal is to win.
Yeah.
So it's about raw efficiency as opposed to everything else, right?
Right.
And the salt score is based off this idea of when this card is played, it's just, I hate that card. So hating a card doesn't necessarily mean that it's really efficient. It's the kind of stuff that it does that makes you hate it. Maybe it wins the game, but there is absolutely a correlation between the two. Usually, no one really gets mad at somebody because they played a 5-mana 2/2 that doesn't do anything, right? It's these cards that are extremely efficient or extremely powerful that also make the game miserable.
Right. I think what you're saying about this distinction is important because a lot of the cards we're talking about are not competitive cards. They're just casual cards that are not good enough for competitive, but they're super mean.
Yeah.
But we are going to talk about some cards that if you've played CDH, you probably recognize most of them.
Yep.
I know that some of the top CDH stacks pieces are going to be in here. I know that
of course.
Some of the top CDH commanders are going to be in here. And there's a reason for that. And that's because they're trying to win over there.
Yeah. I mean, again, efficiency, making it happen, and what social contract? Which, if that's the game that you're playing, and everybody's aware of that, great, have fun. Go for it. If it's not, these are the mean cards. And I don't know, do we want to take on the persona of the people that want to play these cards because let's do this, or is this more of a thought experiment? Let's talk about some of these cards. I don't really know where we're at.
I mean, I was thinking that we could take on the persona, but that moment kind of passed, right? Like you would have to start the episode.
Oh no, I'm talking about from now on. Like this is kind of like our disclaimer.
Okay.
And then we go into it. I'm totally fine with role playing the rest of this episode.
That's hot. All right. Let's go ahead and start with two of our we've already talked about these cards in a previous episode. And everybody knows these. The two top saltiest commanders, and these are not CEDH level commanders. These are casual commanders, and they're mean. That's Vorinclex and Jin-Gitaxias. Goodness gracious. I don't think there's a single person who plays the game who doesn't know these, but let's read them anyway. Vorinclex, the Voice of Hunger, is a 6GG 7/6 legendary creature praetor with trample. Whenever you tap a land, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. And whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during that controller's next untap step. I don't want to belabor this one very much because we have talked about this card in particular on another annoying cards episode. But this bears repeating. To me, this is one of the meanest cards in our format because it punishes everybody, but most of all, it punishes the person who does what needs to be done and spot removes it.
Yep.
Because that person's not going to get that mana back. And to me, that's just, oof. Oh my God. It's awful. It's truly backbreaking. You basically have to at that time, everybody at the table has to be like, hey, listen, like I can spot remove this, but at great cost to myself. And you'll have to strike some sort of deal. Again, I don't want to talk about it too much because we've hit these before. But Mike, tell me about Jin Gataxias.
Yeah, I love Vorniclex's Voice of Hunger. I love to disable people from being able to play the game that they love. And another way to do that is Jin Gataxias, Core Augur, 8 generic blue for a 5/4 legendary creature Praetor with Flash. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. I love drawing cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7.
He's getting into it
I
here.
love my opponents not having cards. The best part of Magic, ruining people's day.
You can tell Mike's never met a spike.
This is just how I feel.
It's
I've
just,
met spikes.
It's how it is.
It's just that normally when I meet a spike, they're smiling,
Yeah.
and I say, "How can you do this? How do you sleep at night?" And they say, "Through their packs upon packs of winnings."
Yes, exactly. So Jin Gataxias is also just completely brutal, and the big reason why is because Flash. You can flash this in at the end of your opponent's main phase, their second main phase, and they basically, unless they counterspell it or spot remove it right then, and it's unlikely that they've been holding that mana up, they're going to discard their whole hand. Which, yeah, it's 10 mana, but oh my God, discarding your whole hand and not drawing any cards to replace it, unless you have a super strong board presence, you've kind of have already lost.
Yeah, there are a few times that you can recover from a Jin Gataxias being effective. Vorniclex, sometimes.
Well, if you're not the one that has to remove it,
or if you make a deal with everybody as well, something along those lines, usually okay. But yes, the point is these are extremely oppressive. They are very powerful cards, and they're also on this scale for a very, very specific reason. They disable you from being able to play the game of Magic effectively because they take away the resources you normally would. One that I particularly hate and kind of leans into these two, we're going to go away from the Praetors. I'm really happy that they're not coming back anytime soon. Crud. Timing on this. Secret Lair release. Cool.
Secret Lair alert.
Yeah. Burp, burp, burp. Speaking of alarms, how about Send Triplets?
Oh
because
my gosh.
This is, I don't know if it's my least favorite commander.
They have quite the reputation.
It's the one that I am the most scared of when it hits the table, I think.
Yeah.
Because Send Triplets is one of those cards that if somebody plays it as their commander, they're going to have a deck that just brutalizes you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're trying and it's not exactly going to be the fastest deck ever. It's just going to be the most obnoxious one in my history. Send Triplets is a 2 white, blue, black for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature human wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. This turn, that player can't play spells or abilities and plays with their hand revealed. You can play cards from that player's hand this turn.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
it's ridiculous.
We're going to talk about taking control of an opponent, but this is somehow equally as strong, yet not the same effect. And the big reason for that is that this is going to happen on every single one of your turns. But not only that, but it's a trigger. So you can cause that trigger to trigger multiple times and lock out basically any interaction that's going to happen on your turn while also pilfering cards from people's hands. I mean, the first thing you would do, right, is you're going to take a land out of their hand and play it, and then just start ripping through spells. Presumably many of the cards in your deck are going to be accelerants, get you more mana in your mana pool so that you can steal more cards. I mean, my goodness. If this card is your commander, that's the thing, right? Is that usually this kind of effect. I mean, I would call this very similar to Mind Slavery, and the only other one which we'll talk about is Emrakul, which is a 13 mana commander. This is a 5 mana commander.
Yeah,
and that's no joke.
And you said, similar to Mind Slaver. I mean, I don't see how it's all that different.
Well, because the player gets to take their own turn.
They do, but on your turn, they're not allowed to do anything.
Right.
You get to take stuff out of their hand.
Yeah.
You literally are taking resources away from them. So during their turn, they're working unless they've got
Mind Slaver is
ridiculous
even more
force
brutal
save.
Because with Mind Slaver you have access to things that Send triplets could never do, like sacrificing their board to their own permanents. But this is still brutal in its own way. There's a reason it's on here.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful, and it's not something I'm excited about.
Yeah.
As far as powerful cards, okay, so things that in Magic that are extremely powerful and mean. The ability to take somebody else's resources or limit their ability to use their resources.
Right.
Extremely powerful. Some of the other things that are extremely powerful are, if this hits the field, I'm probably going to be able to combo off this turn or next turn and eliminate all of you. And I don't know. Do we want to start with Urza or do we want to start with Narset as far as the mean commanders here?
I think Urza has more or less supplanted Narset.
Yeah. So
let's go ahead and start with our friend Urza here. Urza, Lord High Artificer, is just an all-star CEDH commander. 2 blue for a legendary creature, human artificer 1/4. When Urza ETBs, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature has +1/+1 for each artifact you control.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always going to be 1/1 at least.
Yep.
And then it also has an activated ability, tap an untapped artifact you control to add blue. That's what turns this deck from nothing into something. Here's the problem, it keeps going.
Yep.
For 5 mana, shuffle your library, and then exile the top card until end of turn. You may play that card without paying its mana cost. So here we can see why Urza is so incredibly powerful. Because it sets them up and it knocks them down. It both has the engine that generates you mana. Because we all know, Mike, how many 0 and 1 mana artifacts there are in our format. Literally all of them, except for the Moxen, are legal in our format. And all of those 0 and 1 mana artifacts are now Moxen, which are banned. But Urza turns them into Moxen. And then in addition to setting all that up, as if that weren't enough, it also has the payoff. Where you can just pay 5 and start casting spells off the top of your deck.
I mean, I get that this is, it's a mono blue creature with the ability to, you tap artifacts and you add blue. The fact that this ability is just a 5 generic.
Yeah, they didn't even make it 5 blue.
No. And there's plenty of ways to reduce the mana costs of abilities on creatures.
You don't have to. For this, you're going infinite.
Yeah. You're going infinite. Okay,
yeah.
Great. Zoom.
Yep.
Here we go. And it just, it makes me so sad. Like, Urza hits the floor, and so here's the thing. Vornaclex, Jin-Gitaxias, somebody's playing them. They're higher mana, but whatever. My whole thing is, if that comes down, we have to have a plan, or we have to be able to stop it.
Right.
Send triplets, if that's played, I know that somebody is going to have a terrible time, and depending on the deck, maybe everybody's going to have a terrible time.
Yeah.
Urza, when it's played, if it resolves, my entire time after that is just are you going to win this turn? Because if it's going to take you 20 minutes to figure out if you're going to win this turn, I would rather just shuffle up and concede.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. The kind of person who plays Urza is a competitive Magic player, or they think that this is a card that can be played casually. I've told you that I've sat across the table from somebody who claimed that they had a casual Urza deck, and I called BS on that
but I played them anyway, and turns out I was right. There is no such thing as a casual Urza deck. It's simply too powerful. I mean, I guess if you just didn't put any artifacts in the deck and you tried to make it awful, sure. But if you try to make it synergistic in any way, we already know how synergistic artifacts are. They're easy to cast. They work well with each other. And a lot of them produce mana and have other great effects. Urza just makes all artifacts a million times stronger. Mm-hmm. We've talked about we talked about Inspiring Statuary. What a great card that is. Fantastic card. This is even better than Inspiring Statuary.
Sure.
And it also has a bunch of other fun stuff on it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just all of the good. Hooray, artifacts, except for not.
Well, let's not drag him too far in the dirt. Let's move on here.
No, he's a very important person in Magic's history. I'm just very bummed out that he is both very important.
Of course, he's going to have a
very powerful and very, very mean.
Powerful card.
I get it.
Well, you asked if I wanted to do Urza or Narset, so here's Narset, Enlightened Master.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Narset Enlightened Master, 3 blue, red, white for a legendary creature, human monk, 3/2 with first strike and hexproof. Right off the bat, if your commander has hexproof, it's in a league of its own. It's problematic.
Yeah.
Because the most common way to deal with commanders that are a problem is spot removal or lock them down with an Imprison in the Moon or a Dark Steel mutation. Some other effect like that. Lignify.
Some kind of target.
Right. Narset cannot be hit by any of that. She can only be removed through board sweeper effects and other things that don't target, which immediately makes her harder to hit.
Yep.
And she's in red, so it's easy to give her hits. But let's keep going. First strike and hexproof. Whenever Narset attacks, exile the top 4 cards of your library until end of turn. You may cast non-creature cards exiled with Narset this turn without paying their mana cost. So, I mean, I don't think there's a single... I don't know how popular she is these days, but if you've been playing over the past 5 years, I can't imagine that you've never seen a Narset deck, and they mostly work the same way. That's extra combat, extra turns. And the fact of the matter is that more often than not, if Narset swings in once and the deck is built correctly, the game's over. Because she's going to attack. She doesn't even have to land. She enters the battlefield. She has hexproof. She has first strike. So she attacks, exile cards off the top of your library. You're going to hit an extra turn spell. You cast it for free. Well, next turn you're going to attack again.
Right.
If it happens once, the game is over.
Yeah, it turns into a do they whiff on their first attack kind of thing.
Right.
And you're just sitting here hoping.
Ideally, you would construct your deck in such a way that that's very unlikely.
Right. And that's the point. That's why this is on our list of mean cards.
Right.
Because it is... When you're talking about... There's not a real way to make an Urza, not competitive.
Oh, there's a way to make a casual Narset deck, but nobody would believe you.
Right. And that's the point. It's unfortunately, we've all been burned too far. We've been burned already. Because I loved the idea of, I just want to make I want to make an Eldrazi Narset deck. Or I just want to make a big mana Narset deck.
Okay, big mana and Eldrazi Narset are both still really threatening. They're not quite as threatening as a turns Narset deck. And if you say, oh, don't worry, it's not extra turns, it's Eldrazi Tribal, I don't think anyone's going to let you off the hook, Mike.
Oh, no. But but can you imagine the fact that the words, it's not an infinite Narset deck. It is an Eldrazi Narset deck. As upset as you would be still, there would still be a sigh of relief in the very much.
I would still treat them as public enemy number 1.
Sure,
I'm going to be working the entire table to take them down.
Maybe my bounty's a little bit lower, but I'm still probably wanted for crimes against Magic community.
Right.
So let's talk about another commander here.
Sure. I want to talk about my girl.
Yeah.
And she's on here, Emrakul, the Promised End.
Sure.
It's a legendary creature, Eldrazi, 13 mana for a 13/13 with Flying, Trample, and Pro Instance. When Emrakul costs 1 generic mana less to cast for each card type amongst cards in your graveyard. Mm-hmm. So it can go down to 8. Right there, 7 card types. When you cast Emrakul, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that turn, that player takes an extra turn.
we've had a deck tech.
I have a deck,
Yep.
an Emrakul deck.
It's nowhere near as mean as it could be.
It's probably one of the nicest Emrakul decks you'll ever play against. That said, it still has Emrakul at the helm, and
it's one of the nicest Emrakul decks you could have. Like it's one of the nicest Narset decks you could possibly have.
Well, that's the thing is my deck does not win quickly, and it doesn't lock out the game quickly. Now, obviously, she's going to make someone miserable sometimes, but I'd like to think that in that case, that person probably deserved it.
Sure. It's a group hug unless it needs to stop being friendly kind of deck.
Well, let's stop talking about my fun Emrakul group hug deck. Let's
talk about why she's on here.
Right.
The idea of taking control of another player. We've talked about this during the deck tech, but there are some truly, truly nasty things that you can do if you have control of another player. And the biggest one, the one that people don't even believe until they see it, is that you control the decisions of a commander's owner during commands and replacement effects and things of that nature. More directly, if your commander goes to the graveyard and I'm controlling you, I can say she stays in the graveyard. If your commander goes to exile and I'm controlling you, I can say she stays in exile. And then you're just never getting them back. And people don't believe that that's how it works. That is how it works. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a magic judge. And it is going to work like that. And frankly, it's awful. But if your commander's that mean, maybe a Narset, then what has to be done has to be done. But that's not the only thing you can do. You can cast spells for X equals 0. You can counter magic their own spells. You can use sack outlets to destroy their board. You can crack fetch lands and tutors and find nothing. Mike, there's so many evil things you can do if you know just which angles to push when you're controlling another player. And that's, I think, why Emrakul's on here.
It is powerful. It's just like we've talked about it enough times. It still bears repeating. It's extremely powerful. Right. It's a powerful effect. It's a powerful card. I mean, it's also a 13/13 flying.
Yeah, it is a 13 mana,
which is pretty nice. Right. But yeah, it does a ton of scary, terrible things. So let's go away from that territory. Okay. Then. You know what? We're not gonna talk about the things that are extremely oppressive because they take away resources or control people or any of those things. But we are going to talk about something mean and is one of the iconic commanders. How about Thrasios, Triton Hero? Because holy cow! So green-blue for a 1/3 Merfolk Wizard and has partner. The only ability on there is for 4 generic mana. You scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, draw a card. Yeah, people love having mana sinks.
Yeah, and this is not just a mana sink. This is a win condition.
It is. This is
on a 2-mana commander.
It's so easy. It is absolute CEDH level.
It gives you access to green and blue.
Yep, arguably the best colors. It has partners, so if you want to put more colors in there, you can.
And they always do.
And it's so easy. This is one of those decks that I wanted to make a Thrasios deck because I love value. I love getting lands. Right. I love having a lands deck. I love having a mana sink to where I'm never wasting any mana. All that good stuff. And then I got one, and I went, okay, what am I going to make with this?
You're going to make a Simic value deck, and you're going to pop off whether you want to or not.
Basically. And I went, you know what? This isn't as much fun as I was hoping it would be.
Exactly.
Like it is so powerful and so oppressive without directly doing anything to beat people up. You're not taking away, you are just giving yourself all of. And oh man, it gets rough real fast.
You could make the argument that this is the single most powerful commander in the format.
That is a statement.
Yeah, when you pair this with another powerful partner like Timna the Weaver.
Yep.
I mean, some of the strongest triple S tier CEDH decks are based off of that. And it's so unassuming. It's a 2-mana Merfolk that has a mana sink on it. But
yeah.
Hey, look at that. That mana sink can draw your entire deck, ramp all your lands out of the battlefield, and give you
even
green-blue.
Even just the ability for a creature that you don't tap that says 4 mana, scry 1, draw a card. That would be awesome.
That would still be good.
It's so if it's a land, just put it onto the battlefield. Oh, yeah, gross. Like, I have I don't know if it's my best deck, but I'd say it's close. My Damia lands deck,
right?
Thrasios should go in it. It's not in there because if I play Thrasios, that's just kind of what the deck is going to do from that point forward. Mm-hmm. And woof, it's rough, it's mean, it's powerful. Oh wait, I've totally dropped the RP thing, and that's why I love it. I love Thrasios.
Yeah, that didn't last.
He's my long. Triton hero. What other commanders do we want to talk about here, Alex?
Sure, Mike. I mean, there's some interesting things on here, like a lot of infect. Like, here's a card on here that I wouldn't.
I guess it's not that I wouldn't expect it. It's that I'm kind of surprised by how fervent the apparent distaste is for infect. I'm talking about Skithrix, the Blight Dragon.
Yeah.
For 3 black. She's a legendary creature, Dragon Skeleton, 4/4 with flying and infect. And she has 2 activated abilities. The first is for a black. Skithrix, the Black Dragon, gains haste until end of turn. And for black, regenerates Skithrix. I mean, this is just it's a quintessential infect commander.
Yeah.
Infect is good at what she does.
The thing about infect that you have to appreciate is that, yes, it's probably going to kill someone decently quickly, but they're probably not going to win the game. Mm-hmm. And they're also drawing a lot of heat. But Skithrix is not a combo commander like Thrasios or Urza is. And right. Skithrix isn't a stacks commander. So there's very limited ability from Skithrix herself to deal with the amount of heat that's going to be coming due to playing this creature. But at the same time, Mike, why do people hate infect so much? It's just combat. Combat is the most fair way to win. Mm-hmm. I think it's the most straightforward way to win. Is it just because infect turns combat into a viable option that you can actually attempt to win a game of Commander with, in theory? Like, why is she on here?
Well, she's on here because we're looking at the salt score and the idea of a infect creature that you can give haste with some evasion and can come back. Like, I get it.
Sure.
So I get it as far as the salt. Why do people hate infect? I think because when you're talking about, like, and I'm actually one of those people that doesn't. Because I think if it's almost like playing with your own win condition. You know what I mean? I don't have an infect deck, but I mean, if you're playing different variants, if you're playing different types of decks, I don't know why infect is any worse than,
I think the biggest threat with infect is just that, right? That one person will be removed from the game, lose due to having 10 poison counters, and that would happen early. But since most infect decks can't really seal the deal extremely fast unless they're just built at like an absurdly competitive level, and infect isn't even played in CDH as far as I'm aware. It seems to me like the biggest risk, the biggest feels bad situation would be knocking somebody out and then they can't finish the game, right? Or they can't then win quite quickly after that. So now you have the situation where one player is just sat out. We talked about this in our first episode. That just doesn't feel good, right? You knock somebody out at the beginning of the game goes on for another 45 minutes. I mean, what do you find a different pod? Like you read a magazine? What do you do?
And I get that as far as infect for the saltiness. I think with infect, my least favorite thing to get gotcha'd by, believe it or not, I'm pretty sure is combat tricks. Because everything else that can happen to me, I'm like, oh man, like how am I supposed to see that coming? That doesn't feel good. And I see that more with infect decks than I do with a lot of other ones.
Okay, but if it's an infect deck, then
they're going to kill you with Infect.
Right.
So you're
and
like, oh, it's just a 1/1 that I'm not blocking. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, now it's a 5/5.
Absolutely. And I totally get that. And that's where I think the saltiness come from. I don't think that Infect is... It can be powerful. You're right. It has to be with a lot of synergy. Like, I don't see a whole lot of decks that win because they do Infect or something else, or something else, or something else. Like, if the deck is going to win through Infect, you pretty much have to lean into it.
Right, it's like Mill.
Yeah.
Like, with Infects and with Mill, the people that you're attacking are no more hampered until they're dead. It's the same with direct life attack, right? And if somebody's at 1 life, or at 9 poison counters, or at 5 cards in their library, right, they're still able to hurt you. So it's an all or nothing strategy. It's very risky.
Like, let me ask you this: Would you rather lose to a deck that has Infect as the theme, or would you rather lose to a Niv Mizzet deck that somebody puts Grafted Exoskeleton into? And it's like, oh, well, now he's going to do Infect damage, and I'm going to kill you that way. Like, I'd much rather lose to the former.
Grafted Exoskeleton isn't even the meanest thing that Niv Mizzet can do.
No. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Infect doesn't bother me.
Right.
Because it's just its own thing.
It's just its own thing.
So, let's go on to another ridiculously... You know, I'm figuring out that the most powerful cards that you can play... Yeah, Salt is absolutely included. But it's just exactly how much synergy is on the card by itself. And when you're talking about a card with a lot of synergy, let's talk about Chulane, Teller of Tales.
Yeah.
2 generic, green, white, blue for a legendary creature, human druid, 2/4 with vigilance. Just I guess. Because the real things that you care about with Chulane are, whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Then, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and for 3 generic and tapping Chulane, you can return target creature you control to its owner's hand. What are the most powerful things that you can do in Magic? Ramp and draw cards. Well, here's something that cares about doing all of that whenever you cast a creature, which is something that's pretty easy to do in the game when you're 3 different colors and you just want to pay. You want to just play as many cheap creatures as you possibly can. Go through half your deck, sometimes more, if you've got the right cards out. This is another one of those, oh, this seems fun. And then I started to take it apart to build and went, oh no, this is broken. This is broken.
It's anecdotally, I've played against some Chulane decks, but I remember I played against one that's... I remember the Magic player said that they had just thrown it together, and that was true. They had just thrown it together. This wasn't like, oh, this is just not that powerful of a Chulane deck, but secretly it really is, and I'm tricking you. No, it wasn't like that at all. Yeah. They had really just thrown it together. Here's the problem. Doesn't matter. When you have a Chulane deck, if there are creatures in it, I mean, oh my god, did they pop off so fast.
Yeah.
The raw value on this card, and Mike, you wonder why Vigilance, let's cast Vigilance, it's because they felt the need to add white and make this a bad creature.
I guess.
You could just take off the Vigilance and look at that. It's another generic Simic value commander. How about that?
Yeah. I was going to say, that's literally when you were talking about, generic Simic value. Yeah. Just Simic good stuff. It's like...
Chulane's a Simic commander with Vigilance. That's about it.
Yeah. It's... Oh my gosh. It is oppressive to take away resources. What may be worse is to just give yourself more resources and value than anybody, including the other 3 players at the table combined, can deal with. Another one of those commanders where, okay, if I get a turn where I have this commander out, I'm probably going to win the game. Just let's go extra value, whether it's get all of the creatures out, give them haste and swing in the same turn, whether it's something like Aetherflux Reservoir and you basically storm off and just blast everybody. It's one of those cards that it came in the Brawl decks, so it also came with Corvold, who's probably worth talking about in its own right, but I want to focus on the list that we've got here. The insane swings on, here's a commander that we're going to put out here, and it is busted. Versus sometimes some of the stuff that they'll do, and they're like, hey, we made a commander with this cool idea. And it's like, no, I appreciate you trying, but that's junk. The power diversity in our format with the access to almost every card in existence, this one still stands very strong, and very recently.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just confirmation bias, Mike, but green and blue, Simic, so strong. They get so many excellent, just way over the top cards. And this is just another example of that. But let's talk about one last commander, right? I don't think this list would be complete without the old queen, right? Atraxa, Praetor's Voice.
Sure.
This card has kind of fallen out of favor, but it wasn't even that long ago that she was handily the top commander. It wasn't even close. Yeah. Golos has more or less supplanted her at this point, but Atraxa is a green, white, blue, black for a legendary creature, Angel Horror, 4/4 with, say it with me, flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, proliferate. Keyword soup, eat your heart out. This is... Have you ever seen this much value on a 4-mana creature? Of course you have. It's Atraxa.
Right. And the thing is that makes it like as powerful as it is. When you're a 4-mana commander that's a 4/4 that has keyword soup on it, you can go a bunch of different ways, but none of them are bad. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a very powerful card because, yeah, Atraxa, it could be the +1/+1 counters deck.
Yep.
It can be the... it can be like it can be a lifelink deck if you really want it to be.
-1/-1 counters deck.
It can be infect. It
can be angel tribal, horror tribal.
It can be literally anything but red.
Its
deck is basically all that you can't do.
The single most versatile commanders. She can. What does she have? Like 8 to 10 archetypes. She's the best at all of them.
Probably. Yeah. As far as an infect commander, I don't know that there's a ton more that I would even put.
I mean, there are other infect commanders, but none of them have 4 colors and proliferate.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know that there's...
Like, I think she's a scarier infect commander than Skithrix is.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about a 4/4 Death Touch lifelink flying creature that makes infect worse versus a creature that has infect on it but is in one color and can't do all the other stuff.
Right.
No, Atraxa was queen. I think it's Golos now, right?
It is Golos now.
Golos is the highest. Okay. So, but I mean, like, even then, and again, Golos is
the same thing. It's generic value. Just put in a bunch of mana, get out a bunch of value. Atraxa is very similar way. She doesn't lend herself to any specific strategy, but rather she has dominion over a large variety of counter-based strategies.
These are the mean commanders we're talking about today. These are the ones that if you want to play with power, I mean, I think you're pretty much gravitating towards cards like this already. Mm-hmm. So how about we talk about some cards that we would put into the 99 right after we come back from this break.
All
right, Alex. We talked about some of the lead singers when we're talking about power, when we're talking about mean. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of the 99, some of the cards that these commanders are trying to bring out. And either whether it's just through sheer efficiency or because it's just miserable, what are some of the 99 that we want to look into?
Yeah, Mike. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's at the top of the list here, and that's the hyper-efficient stacks pieces in Stasis, Winter Orb, and Static Orb.
Yep.
All of which are preventing that player from untapping their permanents. And holy moly. I mean, Stasis and Winter Orb are both right here at the top. They're both 2 mana. They both prevent players from untapping their land. Stasis prevents them from untapping anything. And, I mean, what is there to say? If these hit the table, I think everybody just immediately stops having fun.
Well...
Except for
everybody but one person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are they even having fun, though?
I mean, if they put them in there and they're doing the thing, unless it's the first time that they're playing with it and they go, "Oh no, what have I created?" Like it's a Tony Stark Voltron kind of thing.
Sure.
Unless it's that, I'm pretty sure that they're not cards that you include unless you mean to use them.
Right.
Right.
These are all competitive level stacks pieces.
Yeah.
CDH decks will run these, and they do it to lock the game out as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you didn't even talk about the one. It's Static Orb. Yeah, it's 1 mana more.
Yeah.
But it's the one that actually probably bothers me the most because it's the easiest one to manipulate.
Right.
Because okay, great. I'm just gonna tap it before it gets to my turn, and I'll be fine. And then I'll untap it for everybody else's turn, and it'll be miserable. Ta-da! It's so rough, and I don't like it. I don't like it.
Well, you have to. Winter Orb's the same way, Mike. Winter Orb is a old artifact, so this text isn't on the original card. But Winter Orb also says as long as it's untapped, players can't untap more than one land. So you can do tap and untap shenanigans with Winter Orb as well as with Static Orb.
I was unaware that I hated that card even more than I realized that I hated it.
Yeah.
Cool. Love our power episode. This is going great. Let's talk about more powerful things that are super fun and awesome, like Cyclonic Rift.
Yeah,
Cyclonic
it's
Rift.
the best card in the format.
Is it the most controversial card in the format?
What do you mean by? You mean that some people hate it and some people love it, or that some people want to ban it and some people don't want to ban it? What do you mean?
Yes, that this is the card that has the most feelings on it. Like whether people love it or hate it, whether people think that it should be banned or not. I think this is the card that gets the most amount of a response out of people.
Right.
If you were to like, what is your favorite card? There's a chance people are going to say that. If you ask people what their least favorite card is, a lot of them are going to say
I wouldn't want to
Cyclonic
meet the
Rift.
person who says that Cyc Rift is their favorite card.
The problem is, if you're talking about somebody who's wanting to play with power, I don't know that there's more powerful cards than Cyclonic Rift as far as just finishing.
I know that there's not a single person listening who doesn't know what Cyclonic Rift is, but let's read it anyway. Cyclonic Rift, 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. And of course it has overload for 6 and a blue, which would mean that you'll return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Mike, what's truly astonishing is just how ubiquitous this card is. It's not just that there are a lot of feelings about it. This is probably the single most popular card on the Salt list that we have. It's in 38% of all blue decks.
I hate it.
Blue plus.
I hate it.
38%. A card
and
can't
that's
get
what I
much
was-
more ubiquitous than that.
But that's what I was saying as far as when you mentioned, it's like, I don't know if there'd be a lot of people that say Cyclonic Rift is their favorite card. I mean, it's in nearly 40% of decks that it can be.
I mean, I run it.
People
it's
like
cracked. It's in my stack. It's incredibly powerful.
It's unfortunately, depending on the type of meta that you're in, it's kind of just accepted.
Sure.
Even though it's arguably the most powerful card in the format.
Let's talk about some of the reasons why real quick that this is so powerful. So number one is that it's an instant, right? Very few board wipes are at instant speed. Almost all of them are at sorcery speed. And the few that are at instant tend to be more expensive or have some downsides like that. But this is an instant, so that means it can be cast on another player's turn, and most often on the end step of the player right before you, right? That's when you could cast this. You can hold 7 mana up for that. But number two is that it's asymmetric, Mike. This is not your typical board wipe. Most board wipes are going to hit the whole table, and the parity break happens in that you're putting up that board wipe either because somebody else has too much of an advantage or because the board wipe does not hit the types of permanents that you care about retaining. This just kind of goes right around that and says, no, it's just not going to touch anything.
You're fine.
Yeah, you're good.
Everyone else is
There's
sad.
another spell like this in Garruk's Wake. That's way more mana, and it's a sorcery. Nobody really thinks about that card.
Well, isn't Ingaruk's Wake just creatures and planeswalkers too?
Yeah, it's not even all
Like,
permanents.
Yeah, it's not even all of the stuff
Right.
that Cyclonic is hitting.
So it's just a fair version of Psych Rift, really.
Right, which is still oppressive if
Right.
it hits the floor.
Right.
But like, Psych Rift.
Yeah. It utterly ubiquitous. And the last thing that I wanted to mention here is that, gosh, Mike, what color would you most strongly associate with wraths and board wipes?
Well, wraths and wiping the board.
Yeah.
I'm looking more white black, but it's particular white.
Right, exactly.
The only reason that they even can like, I get it.
It's
you're bouncing.
right. It's
stuff
not that it's
instead of
bouncing.
destroying
Like
it,
that's
come
fine.
on.
Right. Mass bounce is indeed in Blue's wheelhouse. That said, this is better than any other board wipe in the game. In my opinion, this is the finest board wipe in the entire game of Commander. It's probably the strongest spell in the entire game of Commander, at least in the casual side. And it's blue, Mike. It's not a white spell. It's not a black spell. It's a blue spell. The strongest board wipe in the format is blue. Imagine if the strongest ramp spell in the format was red.
Black.
Red.
It does anything but green.
Right.
People would be
Imagine
confused.
if the strongest card draw spell was white. Like, what? No.
Yeah.
That's
I
not how
can't
this...
wait for I can't wait for a couple sets from now when they make a white card that's just a 1-mana white that says go find 2 basic lands and put them on the battlefield tapped, and everybody's just gonna lose their
not gonna
mind.
Ever do
I know,
That's...
but man, it would be fun for me to see them release that as a thought experiment.
Right. What's the best white board wipe in the game, do you think?
I'm probably. It depends, because here's the thing with like. When you say best white board wipe, I go, oh, well, Austere Command is good because you can do a bunch of different types of board wipe. You can be selective with it. You can go Wrath of God, and it's cheaper and it gets rid of all creatures. That's great. The point is that there's no upwelling of people trying to get those cards gone.
Well, there's no one white board wipe that truly rises above all the rest. You're right. There is Austere Command, and that's phenomenal. That said, it's a sorcery.
Yep.
There's Wrath of God, but it's also a sorcery. There's a bunch of white board wipes. They're all sorceries. There's one, right? There's Rout, and you can spend some extra mana to make that an instant. That's about it.
Yeah, and the other part with that is we are in a game where even though the commander is one of the things that makes it unique, like having access to this creature at all times, the more cards that come out and the more archetypes that there are, the less that I think having awesome creatures matters for making a good deck. Because there's so many different ways that you can go. You can run Urza without running any kind of creatures whatsoever.
Of course.
You can just make it artifacts and whatever.
Of course.
So what does Urza care if you wipe the board? What does Urza care if you do a Wrath of God?
Right.
Like it's stuff like that. So something like Cyclonic Rift, and I promise we'll get off this pulpit right quick. Cyclonic Rift is so busted, so powerful, and unfortunately, it's like you said, it's 38% of blue decks,
38%.
or decks that can hold it. So it's a staple, and I get it. It's yep. What do we want to move on to next here, Alex?
Sure, Mike.
What are some mean and powerful cards?
Mean and powerful cards. Well, how about this one that kind of shows people's distaste for at least one of the formats that we love, but really most of them. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't like Group Hug. They don't like stacks. And they don't like the archetype that this card represents, which is Warp World. The Chaos archetype. Warp World for 5 triple red, 8 mana for a sorcery. Each player shuffles all permanents they own into their library, then reveals that many cards from the top of their library. Each player puts all artifact, creature, and land cards revealed this way onto the battlefield, and then does the same for enchantment cards, and then puts the rest onto the bottom of their library. So there are a bunch of cards like this. This definitely isn't the only one. We got Scrambleverse and Thieves Auction. Lots of cards like this. That high mana red spells that basically musical chairs for the entire board, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't really lashing out at Warp World specifically so much as it is lashing out at Chaos, the archetype. So talk to me about that, Mike.
So we've had some conversations about Chaos as far as it can be fun. It can be something interesting to introduce into the game. It can also go completely the opposite direction, where if it's just Chaos for Chaos's sake, and it's not confirmed at the beginning of the game, hey, this is my Chaos deck, it might win. I don't know. It's here to do weird stuff. It can make people very angry. More importantly, if it's there just to make people miserable, Chaos is worse. Chaos for making people upset is something that gives me a worse taste in my mouth than stacks. Because I just can't stand it. At least with stacks, I'm bored playing against a stacks deck. But I know that they're doing it with intent to win. A Chaos deck that is just doing stuff and just moving stuff around because is the worst thing in the world to me in our format. That said, sometimes you can do really cool stuff with Chaos, and I like it more times than I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's a lot of people. If there was somebody who was going to play Chaos just for the sake of me, like, oh, I'm going to play Chaos and just make people miserable, I don't know why you wouldn't play stacks instead, because there's efficient ways of doing that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just like Group Hug and just like stacks, there are ways that you can construct these decks to just make people not have a good time.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely true. Let's talk about another extremely disliked card that maybe isn't super powerful, but its opportunity cost is extremely low. The Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale.
Ooh. It's the only low cost about it.
Yeah, it's going for about $3,000. It's a legendary land. Yeah, it's a legendary land with all creatures have at the beginning of your upkeep destroy this creature unless you pay 1. Yeah, I mean that's really all there is to say about that. This is utterly and completely devastating against creature decks, and the more creatures you run, the more devastating it becomes.
Yep.
And the opportunity cost for inclusion is extremely low because it's a land. Granted, it's a spell land, so it does take up a spell slot, but I mean, it's very difficult to remove lands. Not many people are running that much land removal in their decks, and this is just very difficult to stop. But that's not all there is to say about that, because the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale used to be even worse, right?
How's that?
In competitive play at the tournament level, there's this idea of missing triggers, right? You need to make sure that you keep your board state in order and that you're playing by the rules at all times and that you don't miss anything. Because think about this. What would the over-under be? Let's say that you have a mind for cheating. Because that's always what we as judges want to put ourselves in the mindset of. What is the opportunity, what's the risk, and what's the reward for a player if they were intending to cheat, right? And the way that Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale used to function with respect to missed triggers is that because, let's say that, Mike, you're running this card and I'm your opponent.
Yeah,
right.
Hold on, let me get back into the RP
Okay.
of Mean. Okay, yeah, go for it, Alex. What up?
Okay, so you've played this card. It's now my turn. It's the beginning of my upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
There are a bunch of triggers that go on the stack.
Yep.
Previously, the way that this worked is because they were technically my triggers, because my creatures had that ability.
Mm-hmm.
If I neglected to pay the 1 for them or sacrifice them failing that, then those were missed triggers, and multiple missed triggers can result in further penalization, including game loss.
But what's really bad about that is that the onus was on me, even though I hadn't even played that card. So that's, again, I must repeat, this is not how it currently works. They have the DCI has found their sanity, and several years ago they made the change such that the owner of Tabernacle of Pendrevale and other effects like this is responsible for reminding the player of these triggers. And of course they will, because they're very good. But the way that it previously worked, that like somebody could just have a land that had a continuous effect that generated many triggers, and it was in its controller's best interest to not say anything and just let you skip 20 triggers because maybe you forgot, but maybe you were cheating. And what I was talking about earlier was that if I was intending to cheat, one of the easiest ways to do that would be by pretending that I forgot that I need to sacrifice all my creatures. But that's not how most people play. Most people don't cheat. And so we have the situation where if you play this card, you're suddenly putting this massive onus of remembering these triggers, and you're in huge trouble if you forget. And even if you remember, you're still screwed. So that was a very long roundabout story, and I apologize for that. But
no, because it's a good way of looking into the intent of. Well, first of all, the thing that you started with is something that surprised me, where you're talking about, as a judge, the mindset that you're looking from is one of, if somebody was going to cheat,
yes,
how would they do so? And when you said that, I got a little sad, because I get why that has to be a mindset for how you learn the rules.
This is for tournament level play. This is not for sitting down at the commander table.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, I get where it comes from. And then I also like the insight as far as this is how this used to work. Mm-hmm. So that's why they changed it.
Yeah. Because
the way this could work, good or bad, it was just not the way that the game is intended to be played. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that history lesson, actually. Oh, sure. So if
there's
for everybody who... Yeah, I was going to say, for everybody who's like, oh my gosh, thank you for apologizing. You know what? I'm taking the apology back from Alex, because this is important stuff. And this is, I guess I'm being mean about not being mean.
Right.
Which, frankly, you know what? That's probably that's the alternate name for our podcast here. Being mean about not being mean. What else do we want to talk about here? Because Tabernacle is, it's busted. Let's be real.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely busted.
We're talking about mean cards, right? I mean, obviously, we're not going to go through all of them, but all of the land destruction cards...
Yeah, that one, those are all brutal. I think
they're all in their same list. Yeah, we all agree. Cool. We've acknowledged it. The elephant in the room has been addressed.
Well,
what do we want to talk about next?
Let's talk about what is possibly the nastiest, most brutal, awful stacks piece in the black color.
Okay.
And that's Nether Void.
Yeah.
There's also the Abyss. They're basically the same card.
Right.
It's a world enchantment, which means that only one of these can exist on the battlefield at once. But it says whenever a player casts a spell, counter it unless that player plays 3 mana. Oh my god. Talk about just awful. Just truly, truly awful. Think about how hard that it's like putting a weighted blanket over the entire game. It's a chilling effect. Everyone's like, oh my god, okay, if I want to spot remove this with 2 mana spot removal, now it's 5 mana. Right. I literally can't play any of my spells. It's just completely brutal. I can't even... When you play this, you have to realize that the game it comes to a screeching halt. Mm-hmm. Everybody's just going to glare at you. Why did you play that, Mike? Why would you do this? Also, how did you afford it? Because it's $1,000 easily.
Yeah. It's... One of the other things I'm noticing, there's not exactly a whole lot of like hyper expensive cards that are super super cool and fun. Like most of they're usually like the hyper expensive.
Most of the hyper expensive cards are the competitive level cards, right? They're the cards from very old sets early in Magic's history that have stood the test of time and remain extremely powerful and haven't been reprinted, because why would you ever do that? That's just encouraging them.
Right. And you know what? Enchant World. Okay, so at least it's not opponents, right? If that's the nicest thing I can say about a card, where it's like, don't worry, it's symmetrical. Everybody's miserable, except for me, because I knew it was coming, so I played, I built the deck to be able to not worry about this kind of stuff. But, holy cow, Nether Void is ridiculous. I hate it. Let's talk about another one that is not expensive and very, very oppressive. Another one of those, if it's played, there is a good chance that the next card being played after it is going to lose everybody the game. Let's talk about Narset, Parter of Veils.
That's so funny. I knew you were going there.
Yeah. You know what? The sad thing is as I was saying that, there were two different cards that I was looking at after I gave that description. Let's talk about another card where the next one that's played might be the worst thing and loses everybody the game.
Yeah.
But Narset is a 5 loyalty planeswalker for 1 generic blue. With the static ability, each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. And a -2 ability that says that you can look among the top couple of cards, top 4. It doesn't matter. That's not the reason that you're playing Narset.
Yeah.
You're playing Narset because each opponent can't draw more than 1 card per turn.
It's really brutal.
It's what's the phrase? Wheelie good? Where, okay, great. Narset Windfall, does anybody want to keep playing?
Yeah, you know what's funny, Mike, is I think this card almost kind of has been supplanted, but since this survey is a good year old at this point, it hasn't had the opportunity to show up yet, right? And we're thinking a Hull Breacher.
Yeah.
That's basically, it's kind of better than this, really.
Yeah. Getting treasures for him instead.
Yeah.
Woohoo! So rough.
So rough.
The ability to take away the ability for other players to, again, get resources, I think, is
preventing
the most
people
powerful
from
thing
playing
you
the
can
game. Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. It's mean, and unfortunately, mean works. It's a game. It's competitive. It's an advantage that you can get, and frankly, with something like, Hull Breacher is at least a little bit more up there, but like Narset's a $1 card. It's $1.50.
Yeah, it's an uncommon. It will never not be cheap. It's an uncommon. I mean, it's 10 years from now, it's still going to be under $10.
Yep. And it's 10 years from now, there's a good chance that it's still really, really good.
Yeah. Or wheelie.
Or wheelie.
Let's talk about one that I haven't seen in a while, but I know that the flavor text is so incredibly appropriate.
Sure.
And that flavor text is, have you ever seen a world fall to its knees? Watch and learn. Void Winnower is a 9-mana, 11/9 Eldrazi. With your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs, even mana value, and your opponents can't block with creatures with even mana value.
Void Winnower says you can't even, which
you
is
can't
still
even.
One of my favorite.
Yeah,
still one of my favorite catchphrases.
That's a fun joke. The card is not fun. Fun joke though.
No, the card is terrible.
The reason that I have great distaste for it is probably not the same that many people do, but this is definitely worth talking about, and that's that because 0 is even, and any tokens you create that are not copies of other permanents or spells don't have a mana cost, so their mana value is 0. Which means that all of my tokens can't block, which leaves me completely open to basically just lose.
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
But beyond that, there's a decent chance, because just for the fact that 0 is even, you've got 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Really, there's not too many spells that are more than 8. Just by virtue of that, I think you've better than even odds that more than half of your spells can't be cast as long as it's on the field.
Yeah. You're eliminating about 50% of all spells, sometimes more.
All of your best mana rocks, right? They're 2.
Yep. You are eliminating the ability for half of the creatures on the field to be able to block. It's Void Winterer is extremely strong. It is. I mean, also again, it's a very good flavor text. It's a very good joke. I love that everything else about the card itself is all odd. It's a 9 mana spell. It is an 11/9. It's like, okay, great. I mean, like, congratulations for being on theme. But how is this a 9? How is this an 11/9 card that does some of those powerful stuff?
It's just the thing is it's unless you're very quick with your thinking, and I'm not one of those people, that it's very hard to form a coherent strategy in response to Void Winterer that doesn't involve removing it, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of your value engines, a lot of your combo pieces, well, they've just had the bottom fall out of them. And the problem isn't that you can't cast spells, it's that you could cast spells if you could just figure it out, but oh my god, good luck. Mm-hmm. It's always a mind bender.
It changes the mental gymnastics that you're jumping.
It's like chaos. It's like chaos a lot.
Yep. It is one more piece, but here's the worst part about it. It's opponents.
Yeah.
So you're making the game harder for everybody else. And you're fine if you're casting this. Gross.
I don't see it very often, but when it hits the field, everyone's in for a miserable time.
Sure. Okay, so Alex, I want us to end with one card each.
Okay.
And here's what I want to do. I want each of us to pick a card that is extremely powerful, is on this list, but is something that we run.
Okay.
Because I know which one I'm going to pick, and I'm pretty sure I know which one you're going to pick.
Okay. I haven't.
Okay. What do you got, Alex?
Guy's Cradle.
Okay.
Guy's Cradle, we all know it, Legendary Land with tap, add green to your mana pool for each creature you control. It's a token player's dream. This is the quintessential green land. You can't even fathom just how much dumb amounts of value that this generates. It's just so much fun for me to tap this land, count the number of creatures I have, and add that much mana. And often do it twice because green can untap lands like there's no tomorrow.
Sure.
So the raw amount of value contained on this land is absurd. Obviously, it's overpowered. It is even for the cycle that it was in, it's the most powerful one. But it's green, so what are we even talking about, right? But I love it. I run it. I run a gold border copy, mind you. Not in a which is $1,000 right now. The gold border copy when I bought it was like $50-$60, so still very expensive, but not even a tenth of the price.
You know, it's like it's $50-$60 back in the day.
Right.
You know, like a really, really cool alternate art Urborg is right now as we're actually recording this.
What is the gold border going for right now? Because this one's going for almost 1,000. Yeah, the gold border is going for almost 200. Yeah. That's incredible. These are proxies. Hey. The gold borders are proxies. This is a $200 proxy, Mike.
Hey, really good job on your investment there, buying when you did.
I'm not selling it.
This has been your Magic Stock Watch for about 4 seconds.
Yeah,
let's never do that again.
Unlike investors, it doesn't matter to me whether the value of my collection goes up or goes down. What I care about, and this is not like, well, I'm better than you. No, I care about other people being able to play the game. And if that means that they reprint Guy's, which they won't because it's a reserve list card, but if they reprinted Guy's Cradle, if they reprint all the cards in my collection and make them greater in value, as long as that means that more people can play this wonderful game, that's fine by me. However, they're not going to, and this card has exploded in price. Only a couple of years ago, it was $300, and now it's $1,000. Anyway, Mike, tell me about your pick.
So here's the thing. I actually feel pretty good.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at all of the cards on the EDH Rec Salt list.
Yeah.
and I don't play a lot of them. Like, I think I've got like 3 total. The one I want to hit today, because frankly, it makes me feel like a little bit of a bad person, but it is my win con in my lands deck, or at least it's one of them. Sunder is a card that I was not aware that existed before we started doing this podcast. And holy cow, it is now a card that I put into my lands deck because I decided that was going to be my, like, no, I want to win the game. Like, this is all right, we're all putting out our big heavy hitters. Great. This is a heavier hitter than my Selvala Explorer Return deck. It's just gross. Sunder is an instant, 3 generic, blue, that says return all lands to owner's hands. And if you want to decimate a board, the ability to be a lands deck that cares about landfall triggers, that's all well and good. But even stuff where you're just able to play multiple lands in a turn, and hey, everybody put all your lands back in your hands. I'm going to put all of my lands back down because I've got, whether it's something like Mana Bond or, from the recent Strixhaven set, Jadzi, Oracle of Arcavios, but more importantly, the backside, Journey to the Oracle, where I'm able to take all the lands in my hand, put them onto the battlefield, etc. The ability to play multiple lands in a turn through Azusa, or any of these cards that say, do all of the things you can to get your lands onto the battlefield. The real problem with this card, and why it's in that deck, is it is an instant, so my timing on it can be as optimal as I want it to be. It is a card that I am going to get the most value of, and because it's an instant, it is something that I can recur from the graveyard pretty easily.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to get these things back. And the part of it that makes me feel bad, I have no problem with the, torrent of hailfire. I'm going to do X is a billion kind of stuff to win the game.
Right.
Because it's like, all right, great. That wins the game. The problem with Sunder, and why I am always teetering on it being removed from my decks, and by decks I mean just the one, is if I play this and then come to my turn and I put 6 lands onto the battlefield, and then everybody else plays 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to quit the game. That doesn't necessarily win the game. I might have just kneecapped everybody, but it doesn't win the game outright.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my problem with this card is because it is extremely powerful and extremely mean, but it doesn't necessarily win the game.
Right.
It just highly encourages me to win the game. I don't know if it's a card that I should include in this deck anymore.
Well, you're right. It is extremely powerful, and it epitomizes just a perfect example for why we need lands deck hate, and we don't have it. The only lands hate that we have is Confounding Conundrum. It's 1 in a blue. But when people say that mass land destruction is lands deck hate, I want to shake them. That's not true. Lands deck,
it's everybody hate.
Right.
It just also hurts them.
Not really, though. Lands decks are in the best position to rebuild after having
That's
their
a good
lands
point.
removed. Whether that's bouncing to hand and playing out multiple lands, whether that's destroying all lands and then the lands that can reanimate them from the graveyard, or whether it's just there isn't even a land deck at the table and you're blowing up all the lands. Well, guess what? The green player who just incidentally has ramp spells is going to recover faster. It's just how it is. Lands in EDH are eminently powerful. Green is eminently powerful. And green land stacks, which is all of them, like make a land stack without green, they're going to be able to recover from anything that you do to their lands.
Mm-hmm. My still biggest claim to fame in Magic has been the time that I won a game with an empty board after somebody cast Armageddon, because I managed to have enough mana to cast Brought Back and get 2 lands back. It's like, okay, great. I'm in a Boros deck, and this person just destroyed all the lands, and maybe I'll be able, and was able to win. And it felt great. And also went, man, I would not have played that out 99 times out of 100. Because when land destruction happens, unless you have the answer in hand, you're probably just done.
I like to play it out on principle. And it's not
Sure.
just because I'm being petty and being like, oh, well, you have to show me you can win. No, I want them to know if they can win. I want to see their deck function and win. Because it may well be that they're not trying to drag the game out by resetting everyone. And they simply don't understand how important it is to be able to close a game out. So in principle, I will play a game out even if I'm hard locked, even if all my lands are destroyed, even if my hand is destroyed, even if I'm chain being controlled. If I will say, let's play it out. I'm not going to concede. I haven't lost the game yet. And sometimes that player will take so long to play it out, and you'll see just this look come over their face. They're so embarrassed, like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was like this, because for every other situation, everyone just conceded. So they didn't appreciate that it actually is important to be able to properly win the game, to have actual win cons in their deck. And so that's why I wouldn't concede to that kind of situation.
Well, it's the same reason where it's like, I demonstrate the loop. Like,
it's like, okay,
let's play it to a finality.
Like, you did the loop 1,000 times. Let's see what happens next. I'm not going to make them play the whole loop like it's a loop. Like, yes, you do the loop. Yeah, okay, you've done it 10. Show me. All right, you've 10 trillion mana. You've drawn 10 trillion cards, and you have 10 trillion life. Let's see what happens next. And sometimes it takes them multiple turns to win, and they're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Infinite mana doesn't win you the game. Infinite life doesn't win you the game. Doing something with these resources and demonstrating the actual win wins you the game. If I am in the right group, I will go the same direction that you do. Where it is if it's a group of people that I play with all the time, and I'm not sure how they win, be like, no, show me. I'll play it out. Cool. I'm here. Let's go. If I'm at an LGS and I'm playing with, people that I don't see regularly or people that I don't know, that's usually where I'm going to be like, okay, you know what? You can have this because I don't even care. I just want to play another game and I don't want to wait anymore. If it's a situation where the rest of the table is on board. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I'm never going to just concede. And I'm definitely not going to scoop at instant speed as far as that kind of stuff. I am going to do the, like, okay, cool. I'm down to keep playing if everybody else is. How are you guys feeling?
Right.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling? And if we're going to continue, we're going to continue.
Right.
If not, fine.
I think that it's a teachable moment, right? It's not about being spiteful or being like, no, you don't have to earn it. It's about making people think about the consequence of doing what their deck is doing and making sure that they understand that winning isn't just about forcing everyone else to concede. That's not a win condition. Yeah. If your win condition is everyone else quits, your deck doesn't have a real win con.
Yep. And that's why we talk about mean cards. And that's why it was a pleasure to mostly talk about mean cards in, our current state. But every once in a while pop into the I'm going to have to come up with a persona for that, for Mean Mike. But either way, it was a pleasure. Thanks for listening, everyone. Mike, yeah. Alex, where can people find you on socials?
You can find me at Lappermedic on Twitter, LAPPERMEDIC. And you can talk to me, ask me rules questions, DM me, anything you like. You can also email me privately at alex@edhrec.com.
If you want to buy any of the cards we talked about, which, frankly, no. But if you want to, that's fine. Decks, boxes, sleeves, etc. You can support us by going to bit.ly/EDH_social. If you want to talk to us about why these cards aren't as mean as we think that they are, or maybe some of the cards that we talk about as being fun, maybe they are mean, we have a Discord link in the show notes. Pop in, talk to us about the different cards that you like, different types of archetypes that you want to see more often, or just tell us about cool cards that maybe we're not talking about.
It's very intimate right now. You can get in on the bottom floor.
Yeah. We're having everybody join in the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. To have
ourselves some Gingataxias.
Oh no! Oh, gross. Oh man. We're gonna have to do an episode of what would be like the. Have you ever heard that question of like, what Pokemon would taste the best?
No, I haven't heard that question. But I presume there's like a chicken Pokemon, right?
I mean, now probably.
Okay.
I think when I heard it, I was like 11, so
It's
it was
like,
like the original
Geodude? It's like,
150.
what? No, what? No.
Yeah. Well, see, when you said, let's go have ourselves some Jingataxis, Geodude was kind of the taste that I got in my mouth, but a little more metallic.
I think Jingataxis is more metal-y.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, the answer is probably Jigglypuff, but I'm not entirely sure.
I think Jigglypuff is mostly air.
Yeah. Air, marshmallowy, and, a little bit. You know what? Anything further on this is probably a little too disturbing. Yeah. So, hope to talk to you next week, probably on a different topic and not eating Pokemon or Jingataxis.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
But either way, we'll talk to you soon.